Over many years of working with clients and then also going through bodybuilding, there's a lot of emotions that come up for women. So I'm just gonna blanket talk to women. You can definitely interject if you ever experience this too, but I've given these 4 cycles in the shame cycle of success names. And so, if you feel yourself fit into this category, awesome. I don't have research to back this up. I just have lots of experience and client experience, and I think it's pretty accurate. So let's start with the first one. And the first stage after you've reached success is when you start to slip, when you start to incorporate back in the sugar, the cookie, the alcohol, the cigarette, whatever it is hiding. We initially as humans want to hide our shortcomings. And so we will rationalize, it's not a big deal. We haven't put the 30 or the 50 pounds back on, so it's okay to have this drink, have this cookie, have this thing, but we don't want anyone to know about it. So it's this cycle of hiding. Have you ever been there?
I can't say that I've been there because I think going into everything that you do with a plan is important. And I think that just for me personally, in terms of approaching that goal, I felt like I built strong enough habits that when I came out of it, even if I were to slip up, if you will, I didn't view it as this is going to be a long-term thing. It's an occasional thing. And just with that mindset, I think I've not really had to deal with the feeling that many people have, which is like, this has been a big problem for me for a long time.
Yeah.
And so for them, maybe it is a bigger deal when those things come back in or they show up again. Whereas I think for those of us who, we're not dealing with any type of addiction, whether it be to sugar, to alcohol, to anything like that, those little things are just like, oh, it came up for a moment, and then we can move past it.
Okay. I would agree with that. I would challenge it in this aspect. The first stage of like, okay, we start to have success in some area, and then when we do not live up to that level of success, either for ourselves or maybe in the minds of others, is we'll want to hide that thing. So for me, financially, years ago, I remember getting a credit card and paying my credit card and getting my credit card, paying the credit card, and I stayed on top of it. And then I got to a point where I racked up some credit card debt. And I remember, I did not want anyone to know about that. And it wasn't until probably a year later, I was talking to my best friend, and she was like, oh my gosh, I went through credit card debt, and I had this program that I went through. And I'm like, wait, you too? It's not just me? Oh my gosh, because I wanted to hide that. I didn't want people to think I wasn't successful or that I had this vice, really. And so she ended up putting me in touch with that credit card program, and I was able to get onto a plan, pay off my credit card in full. It felt so good to do it, but it never would have happened had I not had that conversation with her. She was brave enough to bring it up. So I hid in that regard, and I think that that is common. So my challenge to you is, have you ever experienced something like that? Maybe not with health and fitness, where you wanted to hide that you were not doing what you expected of yourself or others expected of you.
Yes, I could definitely say from a non-fitness perspective, yes, you're happy, you can applaud, and everybody else can too.
Again, I look at this over hundreds of people, and I can't help but think that we are similar in a lot of ways. It's maybe we just don't recognize. So the first stage in this shame cycle of success is hiding. We want to hide. We don't want people to know about it. The next step is once you come out of hiding, you will go into what I call the justification stage. And this was a big one for me nutritionally. And in this stage, you share your shortcomings. So you're no longer hiding them. You're okay saying, oh my gosh, I ate the cookie, I had the drink, I did the thing. But you use it as a form of justification to continue doing it. So for me, what this looked like was I had a little bit of ice cream, and then I would go on a coaching call and share with the women, okay, we don't have to be perfect. I had a little bit of ice cream. And then because I shared that, I was like, well, then I can have some ice cream because I told people I did it. Have you ever been there?
There, I definitely have been. And I think what's interesting is, I'm going to come from the coach's perspective for a moment also. When I've been there, that's when I was most lax with other people who were doing these things.
Yes.
And giving them I guess it's not a big deal. It's only once. It's this and that. So that I can completely relate to, because for me it was in-season bodybuilding or in competition prep, very diligent, doing all the right things, and those were my then expectations for others. There was no leeway because I was doing these things to the nth degree, and my expectation was, well, if you're dedicated to your goal, you're going to do them to the nth degree also. But coming off of that, when there was the ice cream and the occasional cookie here and there, they would come with those same exact scenarios, but
Yes.
just a difference of 6 to 9 months later. And it was like, yeah, I get it. It's okay. Not a big deal.
It is so interesting. You know, I used to say to Mike when we were like in the depths of a bodybuilding season, I'm like, gosh, I really want sushi. And he's like, we're not having sushi right now. I'm like, okay. You know, it's just me. You know, oh, gosh, I really want some chocolate. And he's like, we're not eating chocolate. We're not having wine. You know, like whatever it is, you were so dedicated where had I did not had that level of accountability, which is the next phase we're going to walk through, I don't know that I would have stuck with it and made it to the stage. I'm going to say I probably wouldn't have, so thanks, you know, for keeping me on point. But once we come out of that sharing for justification, like I'm sharing this with you so that it justifies me doing it, the next stage that we reach, and this is one where I feel like I'm living in right now, it's called accountability, but it's sharing your shortcomings for the accountability. So on a most recent coaching call, you know, I had some ice cream with our kids and I was like, I felt terrible after that. You know, I didn't feel great. It was a choice that I made. It was a decision. I don't feel any shame about it. But in this progression, we're no longer sharing for justification. We're sharing for that level of accountability. You know, and I've come to you, Mike, and been like, you know, I really want to work on X, Y, Z. And, you know, I could definitely count on him to keep me accountable. But that's the reason for our sharing. And that's a really powerful place to get to.
No, I agree, and I think that's really important. And you have to be real with people that, you know, you're not seeking out their justification. And this is where having, you know, even if it's not a coach, it's having good friends that or family members. Maybe that's not usually the best option, family members, but having those good friends where you can lean upon them for accountability. You know, that reminder. The reason why you decided not to do this was because, and that's what you need. And that's what like a good friend would do, is they're not going to shame you for doing it. It's kind of giving you that, you know, with a little bit of a grin, like, just remember, you said you wanted to do this, and I'm just here to remind you, and you know that they're doing it out of a place of love, and so it can be accepted. So I think that accountability is obviously a major key for somebody having long-term success.
Yeah. Well, there is the final stage here, and this is one that I haven't yet gotten to, but it's one that I believe because I've seen it in others, and it's the fourth and final stage of wisdom. And so once we come out of all of the shame of like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing the right thing, or I'm falling short, or I'm not as great as I think I should be, or am I disappointing myself or others, it's a stage of wisdom. And in this wisdom stage, you no longer feel the need to share. You know inside and internally what it is that you are doing correctly, what you're falling short in, but you'll mentor when needed. So it's waiting for that perfect opportunity when someone comes to you, like I went to my best friend and I was like, you know, so like credit cards, you know, and she was like, oh my gosh, like I went through that in this program. You know, it's a stage of wisdom. So I think that in each category of life, you know, finances, relationship, health and fitness, you can be at a different level. And I think that that's fine. But this stage of wisdom, you're like the wise sage that's like, Mike, let me tell you about this time I did bodybuilding, and like, here's the challenge I ran into. It's gonna be okay. And I mean, listen, that's a stage I aspire to get to, but I've seen it in a lot of successful people.
I mean, I think we all aspire to get to that stage, and you know, very likely anyone who's listening or watching this right now is probably at that stage in some area of their life.
Yeah.
And the goal is to get there in as many. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to arrive to that point of wisdom in all stages. I think the only person that ever did in human history was Solomon, and
Jesus.
and that's it. But you know, I mean, like Solomon was considered like the wisest person ever to live. Jesus had an advantage. He was God. So you know, I think you have to use true human. Yeah.
Fine.
So you have Solomon, and I think with all of us, what happens is we should be aspiring to that place of Solomon, but just know that, yeah, we have shortcomings and we may need help along the journey, and there's no shame in seeking out that help in whichever area that you are falling into one of these earlier stages in.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what we've done. And although we can sit on this side as, you know, the fitness and the nutrition coaches, we have definitely had and then still sit on the other side when it comes to other areas of our life.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for people to realize, that there is no shame in being at any one of these stages and feeling like you need a little bit more help. And I just want to go back to the accountability one for a moment. That is the value of being in a community. because you will always have that accountability. And it's just interesting from my perspective, when I'm in one of our studios and we're conducting one of our group sessions, and usually they're small, so it's very intimate, people get to know each other, and you hear people voicing the things that they did, and it's just interesting sometimes to sit back and say, why are they saying that right now? Are they looking for the extra layer of accountability to get them back on track? Is it because they're feeling shame and they feel like they need to unload their heart
Justify.
and justify and get the input of others who are maybe doing the same thing or in the same place that they are? And I really find it comical in the moment, but I love what you've laid out here because it makes it very real. Like, I hope that anyone who is in any of our studios who's listening to this right now and does that from time to time will now actually think about, why am I doing it? And I think that's the big key is wisdom really is just awareness. It's being aware of why you do the things that you do or why people do the things that they do. And then you can always approach each situation from that point of view that they're saying this because, or they're crying out and I recognize it because of the language that they're using or the tone in which they say it. And once we start to recognize that, then that's when we can truly, help ourselves as well as help others.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. We are our own best advocate for ourselves, and we are the only ones that can change us. I always say, like, the medical field does not necessarily care about your health. Of course, you're going to find amazing doctors. I have a really good doctor friend, and she really cares about her patients, but at the end of the day, there's only so much she can do from the medical field. Well, there's only so much we can do from the fitness field. You are the only one that can really have massive change for yourself in your own life. And the last point I want to make on these 4 stages of this shame cycle of success is this: can you toggle 2 stages at once? And I believe yes. I think that depending on who you're speaking with, you could be in that hiding phase, but then you have like that really good friend that you want to go move into the justification stage with. So you can be in a toggle point. And then the last is, can you skip stages? And depending on what it is, I do want to say yes. The thing when you said about this wisdom stage, like we've seen other people, what I think about is one of the hardest things that we've gone through, which I know is not relevant, but I think it's important for someone listening, is when we lost a baby. It's my first stage was hiding. Like, I didn't want anyone to know that happened. I felt like I did something wrong. It's all of the normal things that a woman will go through. And like looking at these, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never realized that. But I didn't move through justification or accountability. It took months of healing to then move into wisdom. And there's so many times that women will either hear that, they'll see a post, they'll see a reel, or maybe they'll hear this podcast and be like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are so healthy, how does that happen? And the wisdom is there's something that you didn't do, like there's not always something, I should say, that you didn't do or that you did do. Sometimes it's just the way things happen. I hated going through that phase of our marriage and our life, but I love the strength and the faith and the growth that we had from that and being able to be a light. So I just want to encourage you listening, whatever it is that you're walking through, understand that if you're in hiding, next for you, there may be justification, or maybe you move into a stage of accountability. That could be cool. But once you get to accountability, you're no longer sharing to justify your actions. You're actually sharing for accountability. And then there is that phase, like I said, in health and fitness right now. I can't wait to get to the phase of wisdom where, I can share when it's needed. I don't feel the need to share, but, when someone is struggling, we can be there to lift them up and build them up. And that really is at the core of everything that we do.
I'm just going to leave everybody with this. In order to get to that stage of wisdom, you're going to walk through difficult things. And as soon as we start to recognize that walking through difficult things isn't a bad thing, being in these situations like that client had where she had some great success, has been able to maintain it, and now she's walking through a hard time in terms of being able to make this absolutely permanent from now until the end. Walking through that is what's going to make you stronger, but it's going to give you the wisdom to help others in the end.